Generative music is a term coined by Brian Eno to describe music that is ever different and changing. The music is generated by a system but led by creative guidelines. Some basic examples of generative music have been around for a long time, for example wind chimes. Here the only compositional control you have is the pitch of the wind chimes. However, the order and rhythm of the notes are controlled by an external factor other than the composer, i.e. the wind. In 1964, the first voltage-controlled modular synthesizer was invented by Bob Moog. This allowed musicians to patch a synthesizer which would play by itself by utilising logic gates, sample and hold, and LFOs to modulate parameters. A classic example of this is using sample and hold and a white noise oscillator to generate random voltages. A white noise generator generates random frequencies across the frequency spectrum at equal amplitudes. Therefore, it can essentially be used as a random voltage generator. A sample and hold module reads an incoming signal and captures and stores the level of that signal whenever it is triggered by an external source such as an LFO. These random voltages captured by the sample and hold module can be used as a control voltage to modulate other parameters in a synthesizer. These random voltages can be used to modulate the pitch of an oscillator, creating random generative melodies. I'll now demonstrate this on a synthesizer.
Okay, so here we have our noise oscillator. We're going to send that as an input into the sample and hold. Then we're going to use an LFO as a trigger. Then we're going to send the output of the sample and hold into the CV input of an oscillator. And then send the output of that oscillator into the mixer. Okay, so we've got that. Okay, there are a few things we can do to make this sequence of random notes sound a bit more musical. We can add an envelope to the filter. We can add reverb. We can attenuate the level of the noise oscillator, giving us a shorter range of random voltages. One composer who's used random voltages to control parts of a modular sequencer is Caterina Barberani. She uses random voltages to control parts of melodic sequences in order to subtract or add to them randomly over time, creating interesting generative melodies.
A pattern that works well both melodically, harmonically, and then I start subtracting notes through the use of the gate. So that's my main strategy, like gate subtraction. So I start silencing, muting certain notes of the pattern, and so I actually never play the full pattern, like the pattern in its full version, but I just play certain portions of the pattern, then I shuffle them, I shift them, and I find this way very organic, like a very organic way to develop new material.
When discussing her album Patterns of Consciousness, she said, "I applied a lot of random voltages to mute certain steps of a pattern, so that played portions of the pattern were constantly shifted and shuffled, a sort of subtractive counterpoint. It has turned out to be an organic way to evolve the melodic material."
I was inspired by this approach to using generative techniques in composition, and so I developed my own Max MSP device to do a similar thing generatively using software. In this device you can create 4 sequences of 8 notes and set probabilities for each of those notes playing, and those notes would also rotate around themselves, shuffling the order of them randomly. The inputted 8-note sequence will generate 3 different musical parts. The device will take the inputted sequence of notes and create a 2-minute composition loosely based on a sonata form, which randomly develops. I use the MIDI data generated by this device to trigger samples of classical instruments inside Ableton Live to produce a 2-minute generative classical composition. Another example of where I use generative techniques in my composition is through a Max for Live device I created, where I recorded in electric guitar parts, and then different parts of the recordings are then cut up and sampled randomly in key to 2 different chords. The guitar parts are reversed or pitched up and down randomly to create an evolving generative ambient composition.